Hi there, Claire Chancellor here. In today's episode, I want to explore depression. As a master coach, trainer, hypnotherapist, and holistic counsellor, I've well and truly walked on the journey with clients to help them resolve and dissolve their depression, and better yet, get a much better look on life, feeling energized, living up to their own standards. It is absolutely refreshing and inspiring when those shifts start to occur. Now, depression is absolutely hideous, and I want to share with you my perspective on what you can do to help loosen its grip and then step into that more fulfilling life. So, in today's episode, I want to talk about my perspective of what depression is, what holds it in place, and then the good stuff, right? The solution, what you can do to start to shift it so that it so that you can step into a new you. Now, depression is often called deep rest, and it happens when people have unresolved problems and unmet needs and pretty much lose sight of their purpose. They might think, I just want to be myself. I just want to matter. I just want to live true to who I am. But they've become so tired and exhausted from trying to live up to everybody's expectations, trying to get their needs fulfilled, as well as trying to make sure that their future is secure. So it's a bit of a fruit salad of a whole lot of different directions and focuses that just pull on their energy, causing them to feel exhausted. So the common symptoms of depression include sadness, low mood, loss of interest in the things that they once enjoyed, appetite issues, trouble sleeping, feeling worthless, the guilt, the difficulty making decisions, brain fog, and oh my goodness, the exhaustion. The lack of energy and exhaustion. Sometimes we think that, if I could just find more energy, I could do more things. And that's part of the problem, is that the things that you want to be doing are to meet everybody else's expectations. And so adding more fuel to your body is not necessarily the solution. And yes, you need a holistic approach to solve and dissolve depression by looking at your diet, doing the physical activity, the self care, being more creative. But ultimately, we need to go back to the root cause that created these symptoms. Now, just like planting a seed, it takes time for that seed to grow and then to start to show itself. And so people with depression don't often realize that the patterns that are causing these current symptoms got created so much earlier. And so in a coaching session, what we want to do is to go back to that root cause when that seed was planted and be able to undo that so that you are now that fertile soil to plant the seeds that you want to plant that thrive and create the paradise that you want. So if we backtrack a little bit, during somebody's formative years, they may have looked upon others to tell them what to do. They may have these needs to create that security and that fulfillment in life, and they don't recognize that everybody has a different version of fulfillment and happiness. So when they look to one person for, their strategy, how do they do fulfillment? They may prioritize financial security, whereas others may value, knowledge and education, and others may get that security and that fulfillment from living freely to your own rhythm. So the information that comes into that young person can be quite confusing because there's a lot of mixed messages on how to be happy, how to have that fulfillment, how to have that security. And so even when they try to put those things in action, it doesn't actually create that inner satisfaction because their fulfillment is based on everybody else's shoulds. Jim Carrey once said that depression is your body saying, I don't want to be this character anymore. And I completely agree with him from recognizing how clients do depression. They're trying to be this person for that person. They're playing this character or that role to meet everybody else's expectations. And they've pretty much been wearing so many different masks, to, again, meet everybody's expectations. So those masks become quite heavy to wear, and it just makes it unbearable to know what it is that you want. So much of the focus has been the external validation. You tell me what I should do, I'll do it. Whether the decision is right or wrong, I'll make it right. I'll push and I'll do, and I get it done to, again, get that validation. So, again, recognizing that the masks are worn due to a need for security, one starts to see that the mind is causing this suffering. Some may even describe it as like that ego telling you false narratives about survival and pushing you to create that future rather than being okay to just be in this present moment. So, based on the past experiences of lack or unhappiness, you're doing everything that they can to avoid that and just push, hustle, get it done. The more that depressed people ask for help, the more that they hear projections and ideas and opinions from other people. And it gets quite messy as they try to, again, meet those external validation rather than trusting their own inner peace. They may be on that path where they're trying to get, meet dad's expectations, trying to get mum's praise, trying to satisfy their teachers, trying to be a good friend. And over time, even friends don't really know who they're connecting in with, because the depressed person can be such a shell of themselves. Being seen, heard, and valued for their true, authentic self becomes impossible. And with their low self-worth, they can't see their true self in the mirror anymore either. So, as a client case, let's consider a teenager named Alex. Now, this client came to me as an adult, but when we look back, this is where some of this programming and the strategies of depression got put in place. Alex, back in high school years, was trying to choose their classes, their subjects, their career path, and yet there was this underlying current where they wanted to live up to their father's standards as well as impress their mother. So Alex's mother insisted that the subjects that they chose ensured financial security, prioritizing that material safety over emotional satisfaction. So due to her insecurities, Alex's mother set the expectation that Alex needed to study hard, get a good job. And the undertone was that without that extra effort, Alex was going to become a nothing. So, motivated by their mother's not enoughness, Alex's efforts towards perfection and high achievements are met with pressure and constantly noticing that the goalposts are shifted. So, the more they strive to meet their standards, the more they're pushed to do more, be better. And again, it's like the standards is just unbearable, because like once you do the thing that you needed to do, then there's the next challenge, and then there's the next thing and the next thing. So despite their efforts, Alex started to lose sight of what was important to them, and they started to drift away from their own values. They're just stuck in that bit of limbo, right, where they no longer know themselves. They're no longer creating time for self-reflection or creative projects or self-care or physical activity, because any spare moment in time was available to do the thing to be able to please mum. So feeling unheard, they lost their confidence to actually talk to mum about the dissatisfaction, the anticipation of the confrontation, and that mum had won every battle so far. So there's again that real difficulty and possibly even fear to talk to mum about it. Ultimately, having to go along with what mum wants just to keep the peace, and then hopefully creating some time for themselves. Lacking the resources to escape this cycle of pushing to get things done, meeting other people's expectations. Eventually, Alex's body just went into a deep rest. This is when the depression started to really kick in, and that those burnout symptoms, that they can't push anymore to do what others say they should do. And as Alex's mother witnessed this exhaustion, she too couldn't push anymore. She couldn't push her agenda onto someone who was exhausted and unwell. So finally, the focus isn't on the pressure to push or do more. And now the symptoms have actually become like a secondary gain. You think about another situation where you don't want to go to a party or you don't want to do that thing, and instead of telling somebody, yeah, no, I don't want to do that, you tell them that you've got a headache or that you're exhausted. And somehow that's more socially acceptable to say that rather than speaking the truth. And so symptoms like depression can be a bit of a secondary gain because it takes you out of the game. It takes you out of the pressure, and people tend to back off when you have those types of symptoms. So this is where it can be quite tricky to work out, how do I resolve the depression? You know, you can start going to naturopaths and dietitians and doctors and all sorts of different things to try to resolve it. But again, the body is going to put a foot on the brake to say, wait a minute, if we put more energy into who we are, then I have to, get my game shoes back on, get back into the game, the pressure and everything that comes with it. So the body is definitely going to be, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Your mind might be telling you like, yeah, I want this gone. And yet the body will be saying, not until we work out how to have that inner validation, that inner trust, that inner confidence, and to be able to have the communication skills to be able to articulate what I need to be supported, what I need to be heard, what I need to feel good, and to be included in on the fun stuff. Life doesn't always have to be so heavy and pressureful and stressful. So hopefully this is making sense on why that the depression can be so challenging to resolve. Because on one hand, it's working for you, and on the other hand, it's holding you back. And even as I say that with two hands out, one hand wanting it resolved, one hand holding onto it, you're being pulled in two different directions. This is the definition of stress. Which direction do you go? Gosh, just, take me out of the game. I'm depressed, gotta go to bed, I'm exhausted. So, the solution here. There is definitely, again, the need for a holistic approach to consider diet, physical activity, self-care, healthy social interactions. But the most impactful and effective way to create that lasting change is to go back to the past, whether you're using hypnotherapy, coaching methods, a variety of different processes, to explore what happened back then for you to decide that it was important to hand your power over to others, so much so that you trusted their opinions above your own. So what happened to your internal validation back then? What caused you to switch off your intuition? What beliefs did you have back then about yourself that are now limiting you? So, of course, as a child going through high school, you may have that limiting belief, the belief that like, yeah, I don't know how to navigate this world. And that's quite valid. That's a belief going, yep, from a teenager's perspective, yep, that makes sense. But as an adult, holding on to that belief that you don't know how to navigate this world, that's now become quite limiting. Because as an adult, you have your license, you're available to resources, money, all sorts of different things that you didn't have when you were a teenager. So this is where the beliefs that were working for you now need to be questioned to work out how they're limiting you. You also want to explore, how does it serve you to live by other people's obligations? Now that one's an interesting one because the word obligation, again, as a child, being obligated to listen to your mum, follow your dad's instructions, that needed to be in place to ensure your survival. But the obligations as a child no longer serve you as an adult. And as an adult, we get to step more into that free will with the choice. And when people have choice, they have freedom. Freedom from the traps of their mind, freedom from the guilt trips, freedom from being forced to do things you don't want to do. You now have the choice to go, that's an interesting point of view. I'm going to do this thing that helps me first, and then I can go do the thing for mum, rather than the way that it's been put in place. You do what mum says, clean your room, and then you can go out and play. All of that stuff is held within the unconscious mind, and those programs need to be undone so that you have that freedom to choose, and there's a strategy in place where you choose what you want, what you need first, and then yes, you can help serve others. So again, that's a whole coaching session in itself. We also want to look at how has it benefited you to keep yourself small, and from that limited perspective, how is that holding you back as an adult to keep yourself small? This one's an interesting one. When I've had clients who have deliberately kept themselves small, means that they have been able to observe the dynamics of people. So while they may have stepped out of the game a little bit and kept themselves small, they're still observing. And there's a real benefit here, because if you're small, you kind of get away with stuff that means you don't have to be responsible. I remember on my own journey with coaching many, many, many years ago, there was a part of me that was not small, but I was the creative one. And so people didn't expect or put heavy duty on me to be doing the academic subjects. Claire's going to thrive in those creative subjects. And so it was actually benefiting me to hold on to a false narrative until I actually worked out that, okay, I can make that shift. Was then when I stepped into study, stepped into thriving in the role that I love in this day of, coaching, training people to be their best selves. So sometimes the benefits of keeping yourself small is a fascinating one to explore. So again, coming back, I digress. Let's go back to some other coaching type avenues that we can go down. What are the advantages of not speaking up? How do you feel about taking responsibility? What fears do you have about the outside world? Fear is an interesting one, because logically you may know that there's no reason to be fearful. But if you were looking through the lens of fear, it's going to win every time. So it's going to be an unconscious lens. It's going to be holding tight to your ego. It's going to hold back your ability to make decisions based on choice and freedom. This is where that guilt thing starts to come in. Like I don't want to, too fearful of feeling that guilt. I don't want to disappoint mum. All of that stuff needs to be sorted out. And then the last type of question you can go down is, how do you know when you can trust yourself with confidence? Now, this is a fun one. I love exploring confidence with people, because confidence actually means with trust. If you knew that you were going to do that thing and you were going to get those results, that's certainty. So to step into something new, that's taking a risk. And it's the risk of knowing that you'll pick yourself up again, no matter what the results. So confidence is with trust. And again, how can you trust yourself that you're not going to fall into that hole? You're not going to be allowing other people's shame and judgments to get you back in that hole. I'm here as that coach to not get in the hole with you. I'm going to stand on the outside and help you with the tools and the ladder to get out of that hole. But being in the hole with you, we get nowhere. So again, we need to come back to that self-worth, that self-trust with confidence. And then you can go do the things with certainty. So in a coaching session, I would also be looking at your self-concept, your values, and do they match? So when you think about who you are, do they match your values? This can be like somebody who thinks that they are not enough, and yet they value abundance, or they value confidence, or they value worthiness. And it's like, how can you identify with not being enough and yet you value kindness or self-worth? Like it's a mismatch, and it's going to pull your self-worth down. So again, all of that needs to be worked on if you've been doing depression. As I say that, I want to explain that people will have strategies for everything that they do in life. You will have a strategy to get your needs met, a strategy how to relate to people, how to drive. Everybody has a strategy. And one of the important pieces with helping someone resolve depression is to recognize that they are doing depression, they are not depression. When people identify with the symptom or the diagnosis, when that they identify it, like, yep, that's me, I'm depressed, it's so enmeshed. However, when you ask the question, how do you do depression, you immediately get to step back and see the bigger picture. You can start to see that, yeah, when I'm feeling the pressure, I feel triggered, and then XYZ starts to happen, like I get no sleep, or there's no appetite, or I binge eat. When you can step back from the depression and have a look at the strategy, how do you do depression? There's space between you and what you're doing, how it's being created, how it's showing up in your world. And that space is so integral to then be able to pivot and say, okay, well, how could it be instead? How can this get better? So I've thrown a lot of information your way, but my ultimate message here is that with coaching and understanding the stories that are created within your mind and the ego, that you can soon recognize that these stories are no longer true. And you can start to remove some of the masks and discover what is actually important to you. You can start the process to start shifting your identity from exhaustion or not enoughness, a projection of your mother's insecurities, in this client example, or you can you can look at the thoughts from another perspective and ask yourself, who within me is holding on to these old programs and challenges? Like, who? I'm witnessing this about myself. So if there's a witness, what else must be true? What else can I change? Your soul is significantly much bigger, more confident, more secure than this fragment of depression. Your infinite connection with your higher self knows that things can change. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to this. You wouldn't be seeking out that help. So there's a spark of light in you who knows that things can be different. Follow that. Breathe light into that spark. Because once you recognize what you can accomplish, what's meaningful to you, you can start making decisions and move forward to things that light you up so you can create that beautiful life. That's a lot of information, but hopefully it's starting to resonate and starting to shift even your perspective of the grip depression had on you. And the truth is, you definitely can start to shift it. You can definitely get it to lose its grip on you or loosen its grip on you. And that there is something more brighter, more special on the other side. When you turn the page of this chapter, there's a whole new story to be written. So I'm Claire Chancellor from Be Your Purpose Coaching, and I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.